Jake and Maria had been helping me get healthy for months until they called a meeting to tell me I was the most hopeless client they'd ever encountered. I remember sitting in that sterile conference room at the gym, my palms sweating as I waited for them to arrive. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows on the beige walls lined with motivational posters that suddenly felt mocking. My stomach churned with anxiety because their assistant had called 3 days earlier, saying both my trainer and nutritionist needed to meet with me urgently about my progress. For 6 months, I had been working with Jake twice a week, grinding through workouts that left me exhausted and sore. Every Tuesday and Thursday at 7 in the morning, I dragged myself to the gym, fighting through squats that made my legs shake and planks that felt like torture. Maria had been equally demanding, restructuring my entire relationship with food, replacing my comfort meals with precisely measured portions of vegetables and lean proteins that tasted like cardboard compared to the pizza and ice cream I craved. When they walked in together, their faces were grim. Jake carried a thick folder while Maria clutched her tablet, both looking like they were about to deliver terrible news. They sat across from me at the small table, and the silence stretched uncomfortably before Jake finally spoke. He opened the folder and spread out charts and graphs, pointing to lines that barely moved upward over the months we had worked together. They told me I was genetically incapable of getting fit and should give up trying. The words hit me like a physical blow to my chest. Maria pulled up spreadsheets on her tablet, showing my food logs and explaining how my metabolism was fundamentally broken. She said my body simply refused to respond to proper nutrition, that some people were just built to be unhealthy no matter what they did. Jake was even more brutal, saying I had wasted their time and money for 6 months with no results. He flipped through photos of me from our training sessions, shaking his head as he pointed out how my posture remained unchanged, how my form never improved despite his constant corrections. He said I lacked the basic coordination and muscle memory that even his elderly clients possessed. They presented more charts showing my lack of progress, every measurement seemingly proving their point. My weight fluctuations looked erratic and meaningless. My body fat percentage had supposedly remained static. Even my flexibility scores showed no improvement despite months of stretching routines that left me aching. Maria suggested I was too lazy and undisciplined to ever succeed. She scrolled through my meal photos, pointing out every instance where I had eaten something slightly off-plan, magnifying small indulgences into massive failures. She said my inability to stick perfectly to her guidelines revealed a fundamental character flaw that made me unsuitable for any fitness program. The room felt like it was closing in around me as they continued their assessment. Jake mentioned how I always seemed tired during workouts, how I never pushed myself as hard as his successful clients. He said my heart rate never reached the zones necessary for real improvement, that my body seemed to resist any attempt at positive change. I sat there frozen, feeling my face burn with shame as they dismantled 6 months of effort I thought had meant something. Every early morning I had forced myself out of bed. Every meal I had carefully planned and prepared. Every sore muscle I had pushed through suddenly felt worthless. They were telling me that all my struggle had been pointless, that I was fundamentally flawed in ways that made health impossible. Maria pulled up comparison photos of their other clients, showing dramatic transformations that made my own journey look pathetic. She explained how these people had achieved in weeks what I couldn't accomplish in months, how their bodies responded eagerly to the same programs that apparently had no effect on me. They recommended I cancel my membership and accept being out of shape forever. Jake closed his folder with finality, saying it would be kinder to myself and more honest to stop pretending I could change. Maria nodded in agreement, suggesting I find other hobbies that didn't involve physical improvement since my body was clearly not designed for it. I felt tears stinging my eyes as they made me feel like a complete failure at the most basic level of self-care. Everything I had believed about progress and perseverance crumbled in that moment. The small victories I thought I had achieved suddenly seemed like delusions, self-deception that these professionals were now correcting with cold, hard data. But then something shifted in their expressions. Jake and Maria exchanged a look I couldn't quite read, and suddenly Maria was fighting back a smile. Jake cleared his throat and said they needed to reveal something important, that this harsh assessment was actually their way of celebrating my incredible transformation. The confusion must have been written all over my face as they started laughing, not cruelly but with genuine joy. Maria fumbled with her tablet, pulling up a completely different set of photos and data. Jake reached into his folder and produced a series of before and after pictures I had never seen before. They had been planning this fake disappointment to contrast with my actual success. The charts they had shown me first were fabricated, designed to make my real progress seem even more dramatic when revealed. They had spent weeks preparing this elaborate surprise, coordinating their schedules and even bribing the gym staff to help maintain the illusion. The real numbers were staggering. I had lost 50 pounds over our 6 months together, a fact they had been carefully hiding by focusing on daily fluctuations rather than the overall trend. My body fat percentage had dropped significantly, and my muscle mass had increased in ways that completely changed my body composition even when the scale didn't always show it. Jake spread out the genuine before and after photos, and I barely recognized myself. The person in the earlier pictures looked tired and defeated, slouching with rounded shoulders and an expression of constant exhaustion. The recent photos showed someone standing taller, with visible muscle definition and a confidence in my posture that I hadn't even noticed developing. Maria showed me my real food logs, highlighting how my relationship with eating had fundamentally changed. I was no longer binging on processed foods or using meals to cope with stress. My portion control had become intuitive, and I was naturally choosing nutrient-dense options without the constant internal struggle that had characterized my relationship with food for years. The strength improvements were equally dramatic. Jake pulled out his actual training logs, showing how my weights had steadily increased across every exercise. I was squatting and deadlifting amounts that would have seemed impossible when we started, and my endurance had improved to the point where our sessions felt challenging but manageable rather than torture. Update 1. The emotional whiplash of that revelation left me speechless for several minutes. I sat there staring at these photos and charts that told a completely different story than what I had been experiencing day to day. Jake and Maria were beaming, clearly proud of both my progress and their elaborate surprise, but I was struggling to process how I could have been so unaware of my own transformation. They explained that they had been deliberately downplaying my progress during our regular sessions to make this moment more impactful. Every time I asked about my development, they would redirect the conversation or focus on areas that still needed work. They had been secretly documenting everything, taking photos and measurements that I never saw, building a comprehensive record of changes that happened so gradually I couldn't perceive them myself. Maria pulled up side-by-side photos of my face that showed changes I hadn't noticed in the mirror. My cheeks were more defined, my double chin had disappeared, and there was a vibrancy in my eyes that had been missing in the earlier pictures. She said people often don't see their own facial changes because they look at themselves every day, but the difference was striking when viewed in comparison. Jake showed me videos of my form during various exercises, contrasting my early attempts with recent sessions. In the beginning, I looked awkward and uncertain, struggling with basic movements and requiring constant correction. The recent videos showed someone moving with confidence and control, executing complex movements with proper technique that had become second nature. But as the initial shock wore off, a different emotion began to surface. I started feeling angry about the deception, even though it was well-intentioned. For months, I had been questioning my effort and dedication, wondering if I was doing something wrong or if I simply wasn't cut out for fitness. There were nights I went home feeling defeated, days when I almost canceled sessions because I felt like I wasn't making any progress. They sensed my shifting mood and tried to explain their reasoning. Jake said they wanted to prevent me from becoming complacent or losing motivation by celebrating small victories too early. Maria added that many clients become satisfied with minimal progress and stop pushing themselves once they see results, so they thought keeping me focused on improvement rather than achievement would drive better outcomes. Their explanation made logical sense, but emotionally it felt manipulative. I had spent months doubting myself unnecessarily, battling internal voices that told me I was wasting my time and money. The psychological toll of believing I was failing had been significant, affecting my confidence in areas beyond fitness and making me question my ability to succeed at anything that required sustained effort. I told them how their approach had affected me mentally, how I had started avoiding social situations because I felt ashamed of my lack of progress. I had stopped buying new clothes because I thought my body wasn't changing, continuing to wear loose, unflattering garments that now looked ridiculous on my transformed frame. I had even avoided dating because I felt unattractive and unsuccessful. Jake looked genuinely remorseful as I described the emotional impact of their strategy. He admitted they had focused so much on the physical transformation that they hadn't considered the psychological effects of their deception. Maria nodded, saying they had been so excited about surprising me that they hadn't thought through how their fake disappointment might reinforce negative self-talk I was already experiencing. They offered to adjust their approach going forward, promising complete transparency about my progress and regular check-ins about how I was feeling mentally as well as physically. Jake suggested we could set new goals together, building on the foundation we had established while ensuring I felt supported and encouraged rather than constantly challenged and critiqued. But part of me wondered if I could trust them again. Their surprise had been well-meaning, but it revealed a willingness to manipulate my emotions for what they considered a greater good. I questioned whether other aspects of our training relationship had been similarly orchestrated, whether they had been honest about my nutrition needs or if they had been exaggerating requirements to make eventual relaxation of rules feel like a reward. Maria seemed to read my thoughts and offered to show me all their real notes and assessments from our entire time working together. She said they had never lied about the work I needed to do or the principles of healthy eating, only about my progress toward those goals. Jake added that every exercise and program they had designed was genuinely beneficial and appropriate for my fitness level and objectives. They spent the next hour going through their actual documentation, showing me how they had been tracking my improvements all along. The data was comprehensive and encouraging, revealing consistent progress in areas I hadn't even known they were measuring. My resting heart rate had improved, my flexibility had increased significantly, and my recovery time between exercises had shortened dramatically. Looking at this information, I could finally see the transformation they had been witnessing all along. The changes had been so gradual that I hadn't noticed them day to day, but the cumulative effect over 6 months was undeniable. I was literally a different person physically, with capabilities and endurance that would have seemed impossible when we started. As we wrapped up the meeting, they presented me with a professionally bound book containing all my before and after photos, progress charts, and personal notes they had written about my journey. Jake had included observations about my growing confidence and determination, while Maria had documented changes in my relationship with food and my increasing knowledge about nutrition. The gesture was touching, but I still felt conflicted about the entire experience. Their surprise had been elaborate and well-intentioned, but the months of doubt and frustration could have been avoided with a more straightforward approach. I appreciated the dramatic reveal, but I wasn't sure the emotional manipulation had been worth the impact. Update 2. Over the following weeks, I found myself constantly looking at those before and after photos, still struggling to believe the transformation was real. I started paying closer attention to how clothes fit, noticing things I had somehow missed during the actual changes. Pants that I remembered buying as snug were now loose around my waist. Shirts that had pulled across my chest and shoulders now hung comfortably, requiring me to shop for smaller sizes. The physical evidence was everywhere once I started looking for it. I could climb stairs without getting winded, carry grocery bags that would have strained me before, and sleep better than I had in years. My energy levels throughout the day were more consistent, without the dramatic crashes that used to hit me every afternoon. But the psychological adjustment proved more challenging than the physical changes. I had spent so many years defining myself as someone who was out of shape and unsuccessful at fitness that incorporating this new identity felt uncomfortable. People at work started commenting on my appearance, asking what I was doing differently, and I found myself deflecting their compliments because I still felt like the same person internally. My family's reaction was particularly intense when they saw me during a visit home. My mother immediately wanted to know if I was sick, assuming rapid weight loss meant illness rather than health improvement. My siblings were genuinely shocked, saying they hadn't realized how much I had changed until seeing me in person rather than through occasional video calls. The attention was overwhelming and somewhat unwelcome. I had started this fitness journey for personal reasons, wanting to feel stronger and more energetic, not to become the subject of constant commentary about my appearance. People seemed to expect me to be thrilled about their observations, but instead I felt self-conscious and scrutinized in ways that made me uncomfortable. Jake and Maria noticed my discomfort during our continued sessions and suggested we focus on performance goals rather than aesthetic changes. They helped me set targets around strength, endurance, and skill development that felt more meaningful than appearance-based objectives. This shift in focus helped me appreciate my body for what it could do rather than just how it looked. But then something unexpected happened that changed my entire perspective on the journey. I was at the grocery store, struggling to reach something on a high shelf, when an elderly woman asked if I could help her with the same item. After I easily retrieved it for her, she mentioned that she wished she had stayed strong enough to handle such tasks independently. Her comment triggered a realization about why my transformation mattered beyond personal satisfaction or social approval. I was developing capabilities that would serve me throughout my life, building strength and health that could prevent future limitations and dependencies. The changes weren't just about looking different. They were about maintaining autonomy and vitality as I aged. This perspective shift helped me embrace my new physical reality with more genuine appreciation. I started thinking about fitness as an investment in my future self rather than a response to current dissatisfaction. The work I was doing with Jake and Maria was building a foundation for decades of better health and mobility. I also began to understand why they had chosen such a dramatic reveal for my progress. The transformation was so significant that a gradual acknowledgement might not have conveyed its true magnitude. Their surprise had forced me to confront the extent of my changes all at once, preventing the gradual habituation that might have minimized my sense of achievement. My relationship with both of them evolved as we continued working together. I learned to appreciate their expertise while also advocating for my emotional needs during the process. They became more attentive to my mental state and more transparent about their methods, while I became more trusting of their guidance and more confident in my own capabilities. The experience taught me something important about personal growth and self-perception. Major changes often happen so gradually that we don't notice them happening, requiring external perspective or dramatic revelation to recognize our own progress. I had been so focused on daily struggles and minor setbacks that I had missed the larger pattern of improvement occurring over time. I started applying this lesson to other areas of my life, looking for evidence of growth and development that I might have been overlooking. My work performance had been steadily improving alongside my physical health. My relationships had become more positive as my confidence increased. My overall life satisfaction had risen in ways that extended far beyond the gym. The fitness journey had been a catalyst for broader personal development that I hadn't anticipated when I first signed up for training. The discipline and perseverance required for physical improvement had strengthened my ability to tackle other challenges with persistence and optimism. 6 months later, I found myself in another meeting with Jake and Maria, but this time the atmosphere was completely different. They wanted to discuss my goals for the next phase of training, treating me as a partner in planning rather than a client receiving instruction. The dynamic had shifted to reflect my increased knowledge and investment in the process. They showed me new assessments that revealed continued improvement in areas I hadn't even known were being measured. My bone density had increased, my cardiovascular efficiency had improved beyond their initial expectations, and my functional movement patterns had developed to levels they typically saw in dedicated athletes. Final update. But the real surprise came when they revealed they had been using my transformation as a case study for other clients who were struggling with similar challenges. With my permission, they had been sharing my story anonymously to motivate people who felt hopeless about their own fitness journeys. My experience had apparently helped dozens of other clients push through difficult periods when they wanted to quit. Learning that my struggle and success had inspired others added a dimension to the journey I had never considered. The months of doubt and frustration that had felt so personally devastating had actually created a powerful example of perseverance that resonated with people facing similar obstacles. My story had become proof that dramatic transformation was possible even when progress felt impossible. They asked if I would be willing to mentor new clients who were experiencing the same doubts and discouragement I had felt. The idea of helping others navigate the psychological challenges of fitness transformation appealed to me more than continuing to focus solely on my own development. I had learned valuable lessons about persistence and self-perception that could benefit people just starting their journeys. This opportunity represented an unexpected evolution of my relationship with fitness from personal struggle to community contribution. The skills I had developed through months of training extended beyond physical capabilities to include emotional resilience, goal-setting strategies, and the ability to maintain motivation through setbacks and plateaus. My first mentoring session was with someone who reminded me strongly of myself 6 months earlier. She was frustrated with her lack of visible progress, questioning whether the effort was worthwhile, and considering giving up entirely. I shared my experience of the dramatic reveal, emphasizing how real progress often happens invisibly before becoming apparent. Talking with her helped me realize how much my perspective had changed since that initial meeting with Jake and Maria. I no longer defined success purely by aesthetic changes or scale measurements. Instead, I valued improved sleep quality, increased energy, better mood stability, and the confidence that came from consistently meeting physical challenges. The mentoring role also revealed aspects of my transformation that I hadn't fully appreciated. I had developed expertise in nutrition, exercise technique, and behavior modification that allowed me to guide others effectively. The knowledge I had gained through my own struggle had become a valuable resource for people facing similar challenges. Working with new clients also reminded me of the emotional complexity of fitness transformation. The physical changes were often the easiest part, while the psychological adjustments of accepting a new self-image and maintaining motivation through setbacks required ongoing attention and support. My relationship with Jake and Maria continued to evolve as I took on more responsibility within their program. They treated me as a colleague rather than just a client, seeking my input on training strategies and program development. This collaboration felt like a natural progression from the dependent relationship we had started with. The elaborate surprise they had orchestrated nearly a year earlier now seemed like a pivotal moment that had accelerated my development in unexpected ways. Their dramatic reveal had forced me to confront my own transformation more completely than gradual acknowledgement might have achieved, creating a psychological shift that enabled continued growth. Looking back on the entire experience, I could appreciate the complexity of their strategy even though I still questioned some aspects of their approach. The deception had caused unnecessary emotional distress, but it had also created a more powerful moment of recognition than straightforward progress tracking might have provided. The transformation had extended far beyond the physical changes that had initially motivated me to seek their help. I had developed mental resilience, emotional intelligence, and leadership capabilities that influenced every aspect of my life. The fitness journey had become a catalyst for comprehensive personal development that continued to unfold in surprising ways. Most importantly, I had learned to trust my own capabilities and judgment while remaining open to guidance and support from others. The balance between self-reliance and collaborative growth had become a model for approaching challenges in all areas of my life, from career development to relationship building. The woman who had sat in that conference room feeling hopeless and defeated no longer existed. In her place was someone who understood that transformation was possible through sustained effort and appropriate support. Someone who could help others navigate their own journeys toward better health and greater confidence. The story that had begun with feeling like a failure had evolved into a narrative of resilience, growth, and community contribution that exceeded my original expectations for what fitness training could accomplish.